Welcome back to another FPL stream. It's been over a month, but we're going to be looking ahead to Gameweek 17 and going through your questions as always. And you can see my current draft on screen. And there could be a few changes during the stream, as you kind of know me by now. But I am fairly settled on the vast majority of this. There's just a few places where I'm not completely settled on, but we'll talk more about this as we go along. But the main priority is going through your questions and comments because there will still be quite a few different things to cover. I made 3 videos for Gameweek 17 and there will be more videos as well heading into Gameweek 18, but we're slowly but surely getting into the swing of things. Obviously, we still have a bit of a World Cup hangover going on. I was doing World Cup fantasy content, but we are back with FPL and UCL Fantasy will return in February. But let's go straight into your questions, and it's a pleasure seeing so many of you here already. It's very early, especially for me. I've been waking up very late recently, but today is an exception. So welcome to Naninaro. Mitrovic or Martial? I would probably say Martial at this moment in time because Mitrovic is 1, a doubt, and 2, he's 1 yellow card away from suspension, and that already is a big red flag. So I'd say Martial actually. In normal circumstances, I'd say Mitrovic. Welcome, Gatonga. Thank you for asking. I'm doing well. What about you? Thoughts on my squad? Kepa, Ward, Castagna, Trippier, Cancelo, James, Saliba, Rashford, Almiron, Pereira, Martinelli, Salah, Kane, Haaland and Greenwood. I like it a lot, to be fair. It's quite similar to what I'm looking to achieve as well. I like Castagna, even though you've already got Ward, I think that's fine. Same with the Kepa James double up with the double game week in mind. Trippier Cancelo is completely fine. Saliba is good, although I do prefer White for value, but you might have a lot of value tied up into Saliba, so that's already, good enough. And the midfield and attack is looking very solid. So I have to say, it's looking very, very good, Gatonga. I don't really have any problems with that team. Pick one, Mount, Almiron or Trossard. I'm seeing a lot of love for Mount recently. I know he's got the double, but honestly, I think from those 3, I'd say Trossard at this moment in time. Obviously, you might disagree, but that's just the way I think. Good to see you, John Darren, and hope you're enjoying the holidays. Yes, I am. What about you? Thank you for asking. Yes, we are back for FPL, Nabil. We are alcohol wearing off now. Time to start tinkering again. I actually haven't tinkered much, Stephen. For me personally, I know I can't speak for everyone. I actually had a draft before the World Cup, and pretty much, not much has changed, really. Almiron and Gabriel 1 in the bank, or White and Trossard 0.2 in the bank, says Aiden. Good question. I think I'd go for White and Trossard anyway. I think that's the better duo. Salah or KDB for long term? It's a really close one for me, but I'm going for Salah, so that's where I naturally would say. Welcome, Soldier Boy. Good to see you. Ibrahim puts his 11 as well. Kepa, Trippier, James, Saliba, Almiron, Trossard, Foden, Saka, Darwin, Tony, Haaland. But then I've got Rashford on the bench. What should I do? I wouldn't bench Rashford this week, so you could... in your case, you've already got a defensive free, so unfortunately you can't bench Saliba. I'd probably bench Almiron or Tony. That's what I would do, I think. It's risky, and they can both haul, but I think Rashford has the fixture, and he probably has the highest ceiling as a result. So I'd bench one of those 2, Ibrahim. Merry Christmas, Lager, as well, and I appreciate you with the kind of reminder. Good morning, Kev Mac as well. Mustafa says, I don't play FPL. I just came in to say Vamos Argentina. How was your emotions throughout the game and what did you think of it? How did you celebrate? Wow. Thank you very much, Mustafa. I did go... basically, I went to central London to celebrate with other Argentinians, so that's how I celebrate after the game. And I didn't really sleep much that day. I got home very late. In terms of the emotions for the game, I mean, I was calm. After between 20-80 minutes, I was calm because Argentina won top 2-0 up. But after that, that's football for you. If you give the opponent one chance, especially a team as good as France and players as like Mbappe a chance, they're going to punish you. So yeah, it was just up and down, up and down. My heart rate is all over the place, but it was a great game of football. After the 80th minute, it's probably one of the best finals in World Cup history. But yeah, I appreciate that. Welcome back, John. Good to see you. Let's see what else. I just saw a question. Let me try and get back to it quickly. I think we can go through everything. Start Trippier or White? I'd start Trippier. It's a close one, but I'd go for Trippier for the bonus points, the attacking potential. I think I'd go for him. How did you get those kits in the game? It's just a Away Kits Chrome extension. So if you just type it in on Google, you'll be able to add it. I think the creator of the Chrome extension is called Trout. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few comments like this. So apparently, this team is a bit different to others, and I'm saying, really? It's probably because of Kane. I'm not seeing Kane in a lot of drafts that I've seen over the last few days, kind of looking at what people are doing. But yeah, I think Kane is, I know he's one yellow card away from suspension, but he is someone I think that could be a difference maker for me. He's 28% ownership, so he's not exactly the biggest differential, but I'm surprised that not more people have him. So I think there's a few reasons behind that. But yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest team you'll probably see, and there will be issues with it, but I'm quite happy with it, all things considered. Good to see Ori as well. Yeah, seeing a lot of familiar faces in the chat right now. Obviously, a lot of us have taken a long break. Some of us didn't really play World Cup Fantasy, but yeah, for us it's been non-stop really. Almiron or Mount? I'd still say Almiron. I know Mount's got the double, and on paper he'd be better as a result, but I think Almiron, I always look at form, and Almiron's been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League this season, so I'd go for him. Wilson or Martial? It's a good question. Martial's the better fixtures for me. Wilson, I mean, they play in a kind of similar level team at the moment. I think I'd go for Wilson if I had to pick one. Just a gut feeling, that would be my take. And the same goes for Zaid as well. Hi Dylan, pick a triple. Salah, Foden, Havertz, walk in the back line, or De Bruyne, Mount and Martial. Probably De Bruyne, Mount and Martial, and that's simply because Havertz for Chelsea just hasn't really done it. He's pretty decent for Germany, but Chelsea's another thing. Best replacement for Arnold, Dalot and Mitrovic. Season's greetings, boss. Same to you, Amara. Thank you very much for that. Best replacements for Arnold. You could do a like-for-like with Robertson, but I would probably say James. Go for James. And as for Dalot, maybe Luke Shaw, Castagna. That's the way I'd go about it. And Mitrovic, either Martial or Nketiah. And that's the way I'd go about it. White or Doherty, same price. Doherty will have more attacking potential. He's scoring a lot of goals in friendlies, but Ben White, I think, has a better chance of clean sheets. Even Saliba has a chance of starting in Game Week 17, but you look at Spurs, no Lloris, no Romero, no Perisic potentially. I think I'd go for Ben White. Can I start both Ward and Iverson to use funds elsewhere? Yeah, you can. I even discussed this possibility in my team selection video. I don't think that's a bad idea, unless they've been one of the best defenses over the last 8 game weeks, so that's pretty decent actually. I would still rather have a Kepa and a Ward because you're only spending 9.5, 9.6 million in that position, but that's not the worst case scenario for me. Is it worth to have 3 Arsenal players or too risky? I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, Arsenal are top of the league, but I'm going for 2. I think that's the sweet spot, but it just depends really, because Nketiah's a good option, I think, up front. Let's see if Arteta does play Martinelli down the middle, which is a possibility, but my gut feeling and the way I think is, it's going to go out is that Nketiah will play up front. That's what he's been doing, last year as well. But I think 2 Arsenal players would be the one. And how about 3 Newcastle players? I'd probably go for 2, I think, but 3's not bad. I had 3 for a long time, up until the last few days. Sterling, not for me. Haven't seen enough from him. Even the World Cup wasn't great, had personal issues. I wouldn't go for Sterling. I'd actually rather go for Mason Mount. Is Havertz a better option than Darwin for the next few? I don't think so. I think Darwin's the better option despite his misses against City. He got an assist in that game and he gets into the right positions, which is obviously still very important. Best replacement for Cancelo, I don't trust him. That's fair enough. I mean, I captained him when he got a red card, so I don't blame you. Best replacement for Cancelo, I'd say Reece James, or you can maybe go for another City defender if you want to like for like. Maybe Laporte could be the nailed-on one. Ruben Dias is going to be out for some time. And you've still got the other centre-backs, and it's kind of a completely open battle there. But yeah, I'd probably say Reece James. Anyone else that I'd consider? You could consider Robertson potentially, and that's a bit of a differential for you. Thank you, John. I appreciate the shout out. Merry Christmas, Dylan. Merry Christmas, James. Thank you very much. There's no way Conte benched his World Cup players, right? Yeah, I saw that comment. Look, I think he might bench some of them. Not all, but I think there will be a bit of rotation in mind based on who is fully fit and available and who is ready to do the job for him. So I don't think he'll bench all of them, but you never know. Conte's a bit of a mad one. I'd say he'd bench a few of them. Now, which players these will be, we're not so sure, but I think Harry Kane will start up front. I have no doubts about that, and he was very optimistic when talking about him. Diogo Dalot is an injured out, and it looks like he could miss out in Game Week 17 and be back for Game Week 18, and that's why you could maybe go without him for now. If you've got the squad depth, you could just put him in and then wait until he comes back, but you would already miss probably the best fixture against Nottingham Forest in Game Week 17. How are you aiming towards Game Week 19 with this team? There's a few things I could do. So, for example, I could downgrade Salah to Bukayo Saka with double game weeks in mind very soon. I think 21 and 23. I could also bring in Reece James with that money in the back line, and I could also make a few other changes elsewhere. But I think those are two of the main ones I'd be looking at. And look, with double game weeks, I've naturally over the years, been very allured to it, and I make transfers based on double game weeks, and they don't always pay off. So I'm not going to just go all in on double game weeks. I'd still just think about who do I think is going to get me the most points before and after these doubles, as well as during them, and players like Harry Kane fit the bill for me. So I'm going to be a bit careful when it comes to being too attracted to double game weeks, and that's why at the moment I'm not going for Mason Mount, even Reece James. And I have to say, from those two, Reece James is the one I think that I could miss out on the most. But yeah, that's the way I'm looking at it. Is Kepa worth it? I think so. Now, you never know if he's not fully fit and available. It could be Mendy starting in goal. But you've always got Ward as your backup goalkeeper. I don't think that's a bad thing. But yeah, I think Kepa's worth it. When he had that run, he was making a lot of saves, getting bonus points, and actually making the difference for Chelsea. I remember that game in Villa Park against Aston Villa. He did a great job there. If it wasn't for him, Chelsea would have lost it. Let's go to some other questions. Striker under 6.5 million. I think Nketiah's one that fits the bill. I need to double check that, by the way. It's been a long time since I've checked some of these prices, but I'm pretty sure Nketiah is going to fit the bill. Let me just double check that for you. He's 6.5. So yeah, under 6.5 million. Not too sure about that, to be honest. But Nketiah, 6.5 million would fit the bill if you can find the money. Tony or Darwin? I'd go for Darwin. Too many question marks about Tony. He's facing Tottenham, obviously, but my main concern with him is the ban, and I think it will happen. I just don't know when it will be the case. Is Walker a good choice? I'm seeing a lot of people going for Walker to compensate for Cancelo, and I think there is a huge drop-off, but he's a decent choice. Of course he is, but not the ideal one, I think. I think he'll be a big boost for City going into the second half of the season, but yeah, he's a good choice. Is he my favourite? No. Kane or Darwin? I'd go for Kane, and that's what I'm doing right now. Bruno or Sterling? I'd go for Bruno Fernandes. It's a close one. I think that Rashford's better than Bruno in terms of value, and in terms of Sterling, Mason Mount would be the one, but Bruno for me are those two. Best midfielder for 6 million? Already have Almiron. Good question. That's the thing. I'd probably just go for someone like Andreas and use that money to upgrade another position in your situation, because when you look at the other midfielders, you're looking at Billing, Xhaka, who were doing really well in the first half of the campaign. But would I go for them now? I don't think so. Tavernier's another one. Welcome, Genius Gamer. Good to see you. Mitrovic or Tony? Probably Tony, because Mitrovic is a doubt to starting Gameweek 17 against Palace, and he also has the one yellow card. One more yellow and he'll be suspended. Hi Dylan, what are your suggestions for United assets? Worth doubling or trebling on? I think a double up is good. Once again, I think that's the sweet spot. A triple up is also fine. In terms of the best assets, I think Rashford, Luke Shaw, Diogo Dalot if he's fit. And then the other one, if you want another one, would be Martial, I think. But in terms of what would be my favourites, it would definitely be Diogo Dalot when fit and Rashford. Kepa or David De Gea? I'd go for Kepa. Mitrovic news, in terms of anything in the last few days, I haven't seen anything, but what Marco Silva said, he is a doubt to play against Crystal Palace, and not only that, he also has the one yellow card away from suspension, which is my big concern. De Bruyne or Salah? I'm going for Salah. I think he is the slightly better option of the two. I know De Bruyne looked really sharp against Liverpool, but Mohamed Salah for me was showing some really good form even before the World Cup began. And with Kevin De Bruyne, I know obviously for City he's a different beast, but didn't really show his best in the World Cup. And I just think with Salah, he won't have those Carabao Cup games in January. I think that's a big plus, and he will play every single game with De Bruyne. There could be the odd rotation, especially, with the Carabao Cup semi-final and stuff like that, if they do reach it. So, yeah, I'd go for Salah. Top striker is Kane, Haaland, and maybe Darwin. I agree. I think Kane and Haaland are the two best, with Haaland being first, obviously. In terms of other forwards, Darwin, Nketiah, Martial would be the standouts. Mitrovic when fit. Ivan Toney if he has no suspension, but I think that's a big, big if. Yeah, what about James? I like him. He's probably my favourite Chelsea asset, apart from Kepa, Rizabalaga right now. But, in terms of finding a way into my team, I'd have to downgrade someone. And who would that be? Maybe Salah. Maybe I could downgrade one of my midfielders like Rashford to Andreas, and then I can find that money to upgrade someone to Reece James, but I don't want to force it at the same time. Yeah, Solanke, yeah, that's a good shout on the 6.5 million. I think that's decent. He's not great, and you can't expect too much from him, but, I think he fits the bill. Is Kepa nailed to start? I think so. If he's available, I think he'll play. Salah or KDB, once again, I'd probably go for Salah, but it's literally 50-50. I think you can go for either one of them and you'll be fine, but also bear in mind, what you have up front. You probably have Haaland, and in terms of if you already have Darwin Nunez, maybe it'd be a bit more inclined to go towards KDB. So it just depends on your squad structure as well, but I would go for Salah personally. Kane or Darwin, Harry Kane for me all day long. I don't think it's a contest for me. I know Darwin's the more popular pick right now on Twitter and stuff, but yeah, I'm not really too interested. Yeah, so Brighton could have a double or even a potentially triple game week. In terms of when, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure about that. I think it's game week 23 where they could have it, but I could be mistaken about that. Thoughts on Havertz? I think he's too inconsistent for me to consider. I know Mason Mount is as well, especially this season, but Havertz is just a definition of having one decent game and then being poor the next. And what I like about Mason Mount is that in certain games, he can be a flat track bully, he can get a double-digit return, and that's all you need, really. With Havertz, even when he does return, he gets 6-7 points, really. And I just don't think he's ever shown enough quality as an FPL asset, so not really a big fan. I don't think James is essential, but he's one of the best defenders for sure, and he would be the main, I think, miss an absentee from my team, with the obvious exception of De Bruyne as well. But yeah, I think he is a really good defender. Is he essential? No. Is he going to start every game? I don't think so. He's just coming back from an injury as well. I think he will be managed, but I think he'll get points from time to time, like against Bournemouth. I think he'll start, he'll get points, and he will sometimes give you those double-digit returns, which he's capable of, as he showed last season. Would you play Che Adams, Ben White, or Harvey Barnes? Good question. From those three, I'd go for Ben White. Now, Harvey Barnes, he's showing a bit of form, actually, now that I remember, just before the first half of the season ended. And as for Che Adams, against Brighton, no, I wouldn't go for him. Che Adams is another decent, kind of budget option as well up front, by the way. But yeah, I'd go for Ben White there. Bruno plus Martial or Darwin and Trossard? I personally prefer Darwin and Trossard, but both duos are fine. I bought Martinelli at 6 million. Should I upgrade to Saka or keep Martinelli? I'd probably keep Martinelli. The only benefit of Saka really is the penalties. But when you look at Martinelli, he's cheaper. He could also play down the middle potentially. And I think in terms of output, they'll be quite similar. And they could both be negatively affected by the absence of Gabriel Jesus. So I would go for Gabriel Martinelli. Thoughts on Kulusevski? Apart from Harry Kane, he'd be my favourite Spurs asset, even over Heung-min Son, and the other one would be Doherty, who's also pretty decent as a budget defender. Yeah, Kulusevski I think is a decent choice, and he has an incredible assist record since joining the club, and I know he's been a bit slow this season, he's had injury problems, but I think he will slowly but surely get back to his best, and maybe it'll take a bit of time for that to happen. Maybe you have to wait until the first week or two of January, but I think he's decent. He's a decent option. But when you've got Mason Mount with doubles very soon, and even better doubles, should I say, and you've got other options around 8 million like Saka, Maddison, if he can recover from his injury, maybe you look there instead. And in terms of Spurs, who would I rather have, Kulusevski or Kane? For me, it'd always be Kane, despite the suspension looming over him. Trossard or Mount? I'd go for Trossard personally, and he could feasibly have a double or triple up, or should I say double or triple game week coming up very soon. Yeah, Eze to cover Palace. Look, if you want a Crystal Palace midfield, I'd probably go for him. Wilfred Zaha is naturally known as a troll. We all know this. But yeah, I think Eze is probably the one I'd go for, even over Zaha. Is Liverpool attack necessary? I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Remember, Liverpool have been struggling, but they have a good attack, and I would go for one of Salah or Nunez if you can. Would you pick Mount over Darwin? I think I would, and that's only really because of the doubles, really. Otherwise, I'd go for Darwin, but that's a good question. Rashford or Martinelli? For the next 3 game weeks, I'd say Rashford. Longer term, Martinelli. No love for Chelsea, Assis Mount or James? I think James is a great option when he does start. My main concern with him is minutes. As for Mason Mount, yeah, he's decent for the double, and he's good. He's got some good fixtures coming up, but not a big fan of him FPL-wise. Now, look, I could go for him in the end, or I could make a transfer in the next few weeks to start to build towards Gameweek 19, but I would just rather have these options, I think, from the get-go. So look, it's a tricky one. I think I might add one more. A triple up in Chelsea, though, I'm not a big fan of. Is Mahrez worth it? No. He hasn't even played enough in the Premier League this season, and when he hasn't really shone the world a light like he did last season. So no, I wouldn't go there. I need a budget defender for Cancelo. Thoughts? I think that's the question. In terms of a budget defender, who would I go for? I would recommend Ben White, Castagna, Luke Shaw, and Doherty. Those would be the main ones, around 4.5, 4.8 million. Rashford over Trossard. I think for the next 3 game weeks, yes. Longer term, just like I said with Martinelli, I would rather go for Trossard. Start Shaw or Trippier? I'd go for Shaw. Defense, Trippier, Cancelo, Shaw. Yeah, looks completely fine to me. First bench player, Andreas or Trippier? First bench player. I'd go for Trippier. I'd rather have him. Is a double up on United, Rashford and Bruno, or Saka, Martinelli? I'd rather go for the double up in Arsenal. It's a tricky one, but I think it offers you better value for money. Bruno's around 9 to 10 million, and he hasn't so far this season shown his best level in terms of goals and assists. So I would go for the double up in Arsenal, or you could go for one of each. That's the way you could go about it. Start free from Cancelo, James, Trippier, White, Shaw. I'd start Cancelo, James, and then it would be Luke Shaw, I think. Yeah, I think that's how I'd go about it. Benching Trippier, though, that doesn't sit right with me, I'll be honest. It doesn't, despite facing Leicester. Would you switch Pope for Kepa? I think so. Why is Havertz a bad choice? Like I said, he's just far too inconsistent. It's completely up to you. Now, he showed some good form in the World Cup, I think. And he also has been good for Germany and stuff, but for Chelsea, he has one good game, then he goes missing for quite a few others. You know, Chelsea fans will tell you better than I will. And in FPL, if you look at his returns this season and the last few seasons, even when he does score, he doesn't ever really get double-digit returns. Now, that doesn't mean he can't do it, but I just haven't seen enough from him to go for him and take the plunge. Start White, Botman, or Eze? Good question. I think I would go for Ben White. Eze is the other one that I would consider to start, but yeah, I think White. Nketiah or Martial? It's a close one. I think I'd go for Nketiah, but I think most people would say Martial, and I don't blame you. Which teams have confirmed double game week? Chelsea is one, and there's quite a few others, but I'll be honest, my mind is going blank right now. This is your final squad? Potentially, yes, potentially. Let me just get the super chat coming up right now. Thank you, Carlos, for the super chat. I appreciate it. If you've got any questions or anything, let me know. Welcome, Karaki. Akanji or Walker? I'd go for Walker from those two. I think Akanji is more vulnerable to rotation, and it's an odd one because John Stones can also play as a right back, but I think Walker's the safer pick, so to speak. City fans will tell you better than I will, and maybe the safest option would be to go for Laporte, but he's also more expensive. I would go for Walker personally. Saka or Martinelli? I have to adjust. Martinelli. 3-4-3 or Martial, or 3-5-2 with Saka? I'd go for 3-5-2 with Saka. But then again, if you've already got Martinelli, you might be a bit unsure about doubling up on Arsenal attack. I'm going with Sarr as a differential goalkeeper. I don't mind that. I even mentioned him the other day, I think in the team selection video. I think that's fine. And Jose Sarr's got a few decent fixtures to start off with, but in the long term, when you look at the next 6 game weeks as a whole, yeah, some fixtures are really poor, and they're actually bottom of the fixture ticker on Fantasy Football Hub. Foden, any thoughts? I like him. Once again, just like with Reece James, my main concern with him is rotation. And, you know, as soon as I got him in, I think just after the Liverpool game, he literally had a run of 5-6 games of not starting, and it was so frustrating. But if he does start, he's got the best chance, I would say, of returns from a midfielder around 8 million. Thank you, Carlos, once again. You didn't have to. Walker jugará un reemplazo del City para Cancelo. Yo creo que Walker va a jugar algunos partidos, no todos, y a veces, como dije en inglés, creo que puede ser John Stones como el lateral derecho, y un reemplazante para Cancelo del City. Yo pondría a Laporte, o si no, Kyle Walker, y si no, yo pondría otro defensor de otro club. Pero sí, eso como pienso yo, y para mí Cancelo vale el dinero porque puede dar bonus points y también las asistencias. Y yo sé que está jugando un poquito mal, con un punto y a veces -1 y todo eso, pero para mí Cancelo vale la pena y vale el dinero, 7.2 o lo que sea, para mí vale la pena. Y para mí Manchester City van a ser muy sólidos defensivamente y Cancelo va a jugar todos los partidos, y no puedo decir eso de los otros defensores. What about James? Like I said, I think it's a good option, but you can't cover absolutely everyone. And I might find a way to get him into my team, but I don't want to force it. KDB and Nunez, or Wilson and Salah? I think KDB That's a close one. I think KDB and Nunez just about. Yeah, I have Martinelli as well, but I would rather double up on Arsenal, right? Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I'd rather double up on Arsenal defensively than United, but it's a close one. Zaha, Foden, or Martinelli? I'd say Martinelli. If Foden was nailed, he'd be my definite pick, but he isn't. So, thoughts on Saint-Maximin? He was looking pretty decent in the last few friendlies, and he is a very exciting player to watch, but still Almiron for me. He could maybe be negatively affected by the reintroduction of Saint-Maximin, but I think Almiron is a better option. He's cheaper still. I'd go for him. Salah or Kane? I'd go for Salah because he's got no potential suspension coming up like Harry Kane. If it wasn't for that, I'd go for Harry Kane. He's been the most consistent option bar Haaland. So I'm wearing an Arsenal shirt. Not from a great season, I think from 2020. Salah or De Bruyne? Salah, sorry. Literally, I've got him on my team. It's literally 50-50, maybe 51-49. I'd go for Salah. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. What's with Kepa Mendy? Can anyone explain? Well, Kepa is the first choice goalkeeper right now, it does seem. And when he was fit, before his injury, he was starting all the games. And he was also one of Chelsea's best players, actually. Let's not forget. And as for Edouard Mendy, his form has dipped, even for Senegal, made a crucial mistake against the Netherlands. And he's been very shaky over the last year. And even beyond that, you could say. So I think Kepa has a good chance of starting. Do you think Saint-Maximin will start? I think so. I might be wrong, but that's what I think. Trossard or Rashford? Trossard long term. Is De Gea a good differential? I think it's a decent choice, but I'd rather go for Diogo Dalot when fit or Luke Shaw because of the assist potential, the bonus points and all of that. With De Gea, I'd just rather go for Kepa, Ramsdale, Jose Sarr, Ward and a few other goalkeepers. That's the way I'd see it. Thank you, Leanne. Good to see you once again. Will Kane start, says Tasby. Yes, I have no doubts about that. So Leanne's question is, now this just feels right, looming deadline and listening to your stream. Awesome to have you back on FPL content. Plus we both on 889 and don't play the same. Yeah, that's pretty interesting actually. And hopefully we can keep on pushing and get to a better rank. But yeah, it's good to see you once again. And it does feel right. And it also feels a bit weird at the same time. We literally just had Christmas and we had no Premier League football for over a month and we're just back at it. And with an early Boxing Day stream. Eze Olise over Pereira as a differential. Yeah, the thing is, I'd just go for Pereira. He's got the double. I know it's not a great one, but Andres Pereira, I think, is still the better option of the three. Eze, I have to say, has been pretty impressive, but I'd probably go for Pereira. If you want to go differential, I'd go for Eze. I don't think Olise has shown enough from an FPL perspective. Start White after Shaw. I would start Shaw because of the fixture. I think West Ham have a better chance of scoring than Nottingham Forest do, despite all the problems that United have defensively. Thank you, by the way, to Lipuk. I appreciate it. I know the message doesn't completely fit into the screen. I'll try to find a solution to that in future. I think I could do something about that. So Kepa, Ward, Walker, Shaw, Trippier, White, Nico Williams, Salah, KDB, Rashford, Almiron, Andreas, Haaland, Nunez, Greenwood. Any changes? Potentially Nico Williams. I know Aurier has an injury problem. He could be unavailable, but when he does return, I think Nico Williams will be a bit of a concern, and he also plays in a really poor defence. So what you could consider is Bueno from Wolves, or you could go for Patterson from Everton. And in terms of anyone else I have a bit of a doubt about, it would probably be Walker. I think he will start most games when he's fit, but he won't start all of them. I think there could be the odd occasion where Sergio Gomez comes in and Cancelo plays the right back, or they play John Stones on that position. So that would be my other concern. I think the rest is completely fine. I like your midfield. Your attack is solid. But I would be a bit concerned about the structure you have in terms of you've got Greenwood. Then you've got Andreas, who's a decent bench player, of course. He can even come on and do the job for you. If Mitrovic is suspended, then Andreas will be on penalties. But to have both of them and Nico Williams, maybe I'd try to bolster your squad just a little bit more, and that might require downgrade elsewhere, Lipuk, but it's a good team. And I appreciate that. If you've got any kind of ideas or any players you're already thinking about getting rid of, then let me know and we can go further with the analysis. Mendy isn't pleased with the new contract either, so that favours Kepa even more. I wasn't aware of that, Lago, so thank you. I remember hearing something about that, but I just couldn't remember, so thank you. Looks like he's about to leave the team sooner or later. Yeah, and honestly, the form that Kepa showed before the injury, it was incredible, to say the least, and it was a complete turnaround. Are you not concerned about United clean sheet chances without Varane and Martinez? I'll be honest, I'm concerned about United's clean sheet chances even with those defenders. And I've said this before, they're not the greatest defence, but the fixtures are there. And Luke Shaw, he's got the attacking potential, really. And I do prefer Diogo Dalot for the bonus points, but he's obviously probably going to miss out in Game Week 17. But you're right to raise that concern. I don't think United are great defensively. Eze or Almiron? I'd go for Almiron. Kane and Bruno or Darwin and KDB? Oof. That's a good question. That's really close, by the way. I think Kane is the second best premium in the game, but because he's got one yellow card before he gets suspended again, I'd probably go for Darwin and KDB just because of that. And as a duo, slightly prefer Darwin over Bruno, although that might seem a bit weird. Dylan, I have Shaw, Trippier and James. Yeah, I think that's completely fine. You're settled for this week. I would try to get a City defender, though, like Cancelo. I think he is worth in the long term. Finally, an FPL KOL. Okay, my mind is going completely blank right now. But yeah, I'm very surprised about why Kane isn't picked by more people. I was seeing a few teams, like I said, over the last day or two, and I didn't see anyone have Kane, which is very surprising. But he is owned by 28% of the game. He's not a differential, but as a captain, I think he could make the difference in certain game weeks. Hello, Dylan. Merry Christmas, mate. Same to you, Ashish. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Martial and Nketiah. Like I said before, I think I'd favour Nketiah just about, but it's a really close one. And the main reason why is because Martial, for me, is just such an injury risk. He can maybe have 2 or 3 games where he's fit. You know, he'll get goals, but then he'll get injured. And also, I think Nketiah does play in a better team. But at the same time, when you look at the reverse, Martial does have the better fixtures in the immediate short term. So I'd go for Nketiah, but it's a close one. And Zaha or Rashford, I'd go for Rashford for sure there. So you can cover United offensively with Rashford and go for Nketiah. Thank you, Lipuk. Merry Christmas and Vamos Argentina. Thank you. Yeah, it was good to see Messi lift the trophy, but obviously we just got to focus on the Premier League now, because otherwise, if I keep on thinking about the World Cup, I'm never going to move on. Do you think Liverpool will keep a clean sheet against Villa? I think they can, but will they? I don't think so. Having said that, I think Liverpool will win, and I think they will struggle, Aston Villa. You know, not having Emi Martinez, Olsen's a doubt, and they could even play their 4th choice goalkeeper potentially. Best goalkeeper for me, it's Kepa Arrizabalaga if he's fit, and you know the status quo has remained. Then he remains the starting goalkeeper. Obviously, Ward is the best 4 million, so there's no choice or no point talking about him. Yeah, I'd say Kepa's up there. A few others to consider would include Ramsdale. I think Ramsdale is a bit overlooked because you've already got Ben White, Saliba, and a few others. But yeah, I'd say Kepa. Martial or Havertz? I'd go for Martial, honestly. That's the way I'd go about it. Why not City player? Well, I've got 2. I've got Haaland. I know the kits might be confusing, but I've got Cancelo and Haaland. I was considering a Foden or De Bruyne, but I'm quite happy with what I have. Mount is fit. Yes, he returned to training 2 or 3 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he is fit. Triple City attack differential and save money with no Cancelo. I don't mind that per se, but I would rather just have a double up in City offensively and go for a defender like Cancelo. That's the way I'd go about it. But if you have a feeling about them scoring a lot of goals and conceding a few as well at the same time, then maybe you're on the right track. And just go for what you think, Marco, but I personally wouldn't triple up on City offensively. I also want a bit of diversity in terms of attackers and cover different teams. Cucurella, Estupinian or Matip? I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of any of them. If I had to pick one, it'd be Estupinian. He's got attacking potential. He had a very good World Cup, and Brighton could have a double or triple game week very soon. Kepa, Cancelo, Martial or Edison, Nunez, Patterson? I'd go for the first trio. Kepa, Cancelo, Martial, Jaski. Is going with both Patterson and Bueno a big risk in defence? I would try to upgrade one of them, even if it's just to a Ben White, a Castagna, a Doherty, something like that. I think it is a risk because Bueno isn't completely nailed. I think Aït-Nouri scored the other day in the Cup, and I don't think Bueno's necessarily nailed on per se. And they both play in teams fighting relegation, let's be honest. So I would try to upgrade one of them if you can, and I think you could do it. Why Salah over KDB? He's on penalties. Salah showed some very good form just before the World Cup, and I've also already got Haaland to cover City offensively, and I'd rather cover someone from Liverpool. And obviously I could go for Nunez, but I would rather go for Salah. And historically, Salah's the best FPL option of all time. So yeah, maybe you could say it's a bit of I wouldn't say nostalgia bias, but maybe you're looking a bit too much at what Salah has done in the past. But for me, he was doing really well just before the World Cup started, and I'm going to go for him. Martial and Andreas or Foden, Saka plus Greenwood. Martial and Andreas, I think, is slightly better. Yeah, this is the thing, look, and I've always said this. For me, Andreas is better than Greenwood, and that's why a lot of people are going for 3-4-3, or basically going for 3 forwards and not going for 5 midfielders. But for me, it's not just about that. In terms of Greenwood versus Andreas, it also can influence your other midfielders, and it can also influence if you can have Harry Kane alongside Salah and De Bruyne or Haaland, whoever it may be. So that's why I'm going for Greenwood right now, but I think Andreas and Martial as a duo is better from what you said. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. Kepa, Ward, James, Trippier, Cancelo, Bueno, White, Salah, Martinelli, Almiron, Andreas, Rashford, Haaland, Martial, Nunez. Don't know how to get Kane. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Now, don't just force Kane into your team. Like, I have to say, for me, he's the second best option in the game after Haaland. But when you add the risk of suspension, if he only gets one more yellow, he's suspended. That's already a big red flag. And you've already got a very solid team, so you might have to undo quite a bit of it. You might need to downgrade Reece James or downgrade Nunez or something like that in order to fund Harry Kane. And it might not be worth it in your case. I have to say, your team is looking very solid. Is there anyone that I'm a bit unconcerned about? Maybe Bueno, but he's a budget option anyway. Your forward line's still looking very good, even with no Kane. So honestly, how would be the best way to get Kane? Probably Reece James to a budget defender and then upgrade Nunez to Kane. But then at the same time, you don't want to have a case of having Patterson and Bueno in your backline, Carlos. So it's a bit of a tricky one, actually. If you really want to get Kane, then I would probably say downgrade Martial to Greenwood and then upgrade Nunez to Kane. I think that would be the best way. Or maybe you could get another striker that's a bit better than Greenwood, who's still cheap and you can afford it. But yeah, it might not be worth it in your situation. Is Cancelo essential? I don't think he's essential, but he is the best City option for me defensively because he's the most nailed, he's a bonus points machine, and he also can get attacking returns. But no, he's not essential. Definitely not. His points over the last 6 game weeks will tell you that. Let's see. Salah's going on a goal drought because of that Christmas picture. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's something I thought about when I saw the annual Christmas picture. That is true. What do you think about Robertson? If you're looking for a differential defender, look no further for me. But my main concern with Liverpool assets is that they have a lot of away fixtures and they haven't kept the clean sheet away from home, I think, all season. So that is a big red flag. And you can also go for Reece James for cheaper. He's got a double game week coming up very soon. Better fixtures. You've also got Cancelo, who plays in a better team and defence. So I like Robertson. We know what he can do, but I'll just go for Reece James or Cancelo or a few others. Maybe just go for budget defenders as well. Not really going to consider Carvalho. I know he scored against City, but no, I wouldn't go for him. Hugo Bueno or Luke Thomas? I'd go for Bueno. Yeah, Luke Thomas, I don't know if he's going to be nailed on, but he should start some games, but I'd go for Bueno. I'd rather go for Castagna to cover Leicester defensively, or you've already got Ward potentially, so that should be enough. Akanji or Stones? I'm not exactly sure who's going to be more nailed. I think the big plus point with Stones is that he can play as a right back as well in Pep's system. So I think I'd go for him, but I don't think either of them are necessarily nailed on per se. Ivan Toney or Kane? I'd go for Kane personally. That's just the way I'd go about it. Is Alisson a good option? Not in my opinion. I think it's far too much money. Liverpool aren't keeping enough clean sheets and they've got a lot of away fixtures and I just don't... They can get the clean sheets, but I could see quite a few, odd 1 goals or 2 goals being conceded in each game, so I wouldn't go for him. KDB or Salah? I'm going for Salah, but it's a close call, and to be honest, you could go for either one, and it's fine. Obviously, it's a really popular question right now. I think it's one of the biggest conundrums, and we'll go through a comparison very shortly, actually. Would you get Dunk or Shaw? I'd go for Shaw because of the fixtures. I think that's a big plus point. I know United are missing some key defenders. Defensively, when you compare both teams, I think they're quite similar. I think Brighton have been a bit maybe underwhelming this season defensively compared to the campaigns gone by. And honestly, in terms of FPL points, they both have been very underwhelming. But I think Dunk is more likely to score a goal. We all know this. Historically, he's a very high-scoring defender. But Luke Shaw's got the assist potential. And I think United will shore things up at the back and get better and better. And fixtures like Nottingham Forest at home is just too good to turn down. When you look at Dunk, though, the big kind of argument for him is that he could have a double or triple game week very soon. But I'd probably go for Shaw from those two, and that's what I'm doing right now. All right, we'll go through the super chat before going through a few other screens. So thank you, Jas. Shaw, Almiron, and Stupinian. Who to start this game week? I would go for Luke Shaw, but obviously Almiron has been one of the most informed players in the Premier League this season, so you might be a bit hesitant about benching him, and that's completely fine. But from those three, I would start Shaw. And Brighton typically struggle a bit against Southampton. They can see goals in that game. So yeah, I'd go for Shaw from those three. It's between him and Almiron, and I'd go for Luke Shaw. So thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And let's now go through a few other screens. So let's go through the fixture ticker, which we haven't checked in over a month. So definitely things have changed. Chelsea are top, and that's why there's a lot of love there for the likes of Mason Mount, Reece James, alongside Kepa Arrizabalaga. I'm even seeing Havertz shouts with that double game week in 19. Obviously, it does feature Man City, but still, you know, 2-3 points, wherever it may be against City. You add the Fulham game on top of it, it could be pretty decent. Then you've got Man City in second place. They've got a double in Game Week 20. Once again, not a great double. You know, you got Man United and Tottenham. Another double there is for Spurs, who are kind of mid-table. They've got Arsenal and Man City in Game Week 20. A lot of these doubles are very, very underwhelming, you could say. Fulham have Leicester and Chelsea, which is an okay double, you could say. But, you know, defensive assets, I wouldn't consider Fulham at all. It's just really Mitrovic, if he's fit, and Pereira. Just remember with Mitrovic, he is one yellow card away from suspension. Obviously, we have mentioned that quite a few times today. In terms of who's bottom in this fixture ticker, you've got the likes of Wolves, Bournemouth, Liverpool, and that's why maybe a lot of people are going for City assets like De Bruyne over Salah. Look, it's a close one. You've also got Arsenal as well in the bottom five. But there you go. That is the fixture ticker for you. That is all courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. And also predicted points. You've got Haaland, Kane, De Bruyne, Martial and Son making up the top five. Then you've got Rashford, Reece James, Foden, Bruno Fernandes as well. But yeah, I might make a few changes to this team. And yeah, well, we're going to be finding out very soon anyway, so don't worry about that. So if you haven't already, by the way, obviously we've had a lot of support throughout the stream, and I very much appreciate it. But if you haven't already, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. We're trying to get this stream to over 300 likes. It's very ambitious, but I think we can do it. And we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers. So if I've answered your question, and if I've also just engaged with you in general, then be sure to drop it a like to show some support. It really would be appreciated. And let's go for a few other things as well, such as the price changes. Obviously, they aren't going to be that important anyway right now. Remember, prices are locked, but we will be going through this website very soon, FPL statistics. And once prices are unlocked and we can get some, you know, action, price rises and falls, we'll be covering it on this channel in reaction streams, deadline streams, you name it. That will all be covered on this channel. And if we do stream long enough, we could also show you the Spurs versus Brentford lineups, but that all depends on how many people are here after the deadline has passed. So that is all. I'm going to go back to the predicted points just to refresh your memories, and I'm going to take a very short break, literally just a few seconds, and I'll be right back going through your questions as always, and also potentially tinkering with my team on stream. Okay, so we are back, and we are going to go back to my team. So this is what I have. Obviously, I've had a lot of questions about Salah versus De Bruyne, and I know with all the arguments I've made for Salah, and I do think, you know, in isolation, without thinking of doubles and all of that, I think he is the slightly better option of the two. But of course, we all have our different opinions, and there's a few things or a few players I'm definitely missing. Not just De Bruyne, Reece James in the back line. They could all potentially be added into my team, and I will be looking at that very soon. Why does everyone go for Kepa? Is he nailed and fit? He was in training the other day, same with Mason Mount as well. And also, is he nailed? He should be, based on before his injury, he was the #1 goalkeeper for Chelsea. And not only that, he was absolutely smashing it with some great performances, and he was the difference in certain games. So I think he will start, and he is obviously in training. So that's obviously big news. I will bench Martinelli for Luke Shaw. That's fair enough. I think Martinelli against West Ham's decent. Yeah, I scored against them in the past as well. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad decision. Chelsea's cheap defender, please. A cheap defender from Chelsea. Cucurella, potentially. I think that's how I'd go about it. Maybe Chalobah, if I'm not mistaken. But for me, with Chelsea, it's just Reece James or nothing in the back line, or Kepa to cover their defence. Salah or Messi? It's Messi all day long, mate. Come on. Rashford and Dunk or Kulusevski and Shaw. I'd actually say Kulusevski and Shaw from those two duos. Best defender for 4.5 million. I've had this concern as well. I'd say Botman is one of the best. 4.4 million defender, right up there so far this season. Yeah, probably Botman. Bench James or Trippier? I'd bench Trippier, but he's only blanked, what, 3 or 4 times this season? Yeah, it's a close call, but I think I'd start James there. Salah, Kane, Shaw, Nunez, KDB, James. So which trio would you prefer? Probably Salah, Kane, and Shaw. Would you go for Edison over Cancelo? No, I wouldn't. I'd just rather have Cancelo. Foden or Bruno? Foden for me. Is leaving enough money or making an easy transfer to Maddison in Game Week 19 important? I don't think it's essential or necessarily important, but it might be a nice option to have. And Maddison, when he's fit, is one of the best midfielders in the game, especially at his price. But I don't think you have to do that, Alex. And you don't want to sacrifice the game weeks just before Game Week 19, just to have the money available in that time period to then bring in Maddison. So be aware of that and don't sacrifice any game weeks just to get Maddison in a few weeks. You know, his injury problem could be even more serious than we thought. And even if he does come back in Game Week 18 or something, he might be slowly eased in and not get the full 90 like you want. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes is a good shout. He was in my first draft video. But I think Rashford, for a few million cheaper, is probably the one to go for. Hey Dylan, Wilson and Trussell or Darwin and Almiron? Good to see you, Comet Bird. I would probably go for... Wow, that's a close one. Probably Darwin and Almiron, but it's literally 50-50. Hi Dylan, I think only Premier League will live up to the hype of post-World Cup in terms of quality. I mean, I don't watch many leagues, well, at least this season anyway. I don't watch many leagues, but... Yeah, I mean, let's wait and see. Obviously, we saw the City-Liverpool game, and that was of real high quality. It was an end-to-end game, very entertaining. But it might take a bit of time for some teams to get back up to speed. Che Adams or Greenwood? Plan to bring back Mitrovic later on? Well, Greenwood is literally just there as a budget option to sit on your bench, so Che Adams is the better choice if you can afford it. I would go for Nketiah, but that's an unpopular opinion, and I just think Nketiah's got, I think anyway, lower ownership, and he also plays in a better team, and I think he will play down the middle and not Martinelli. Garnacho to start? I don't think he'll start every game. I think it'll be a case of him starting the odd game, and if anything, more so than not, he'll come off the bench to make an impact. But yeah, he has a chance of starting. Do I think he will start? No, but I could be wrong. James or Shaw this game week? For this game week specifically, I'd say Reece James. Obviously, if I had the funds, I'd have him in my team, of course, but I'd have to downgrade someone else, and that's why I don't have him. Probably Reece James, and also he's got a double very soon, which is a big plus. Dawson Azpilicueta, not for me. Like I said for Chelsea, if you want to cover them defensively, I would go for Kepa and Reece James, and that's about it, really. Will Mitrovic play? He's a big doubt, so honestly, I'm not so sure. Oh, Jesus, my voice is cracking already. Will Mitrovic play? Marco Silva has said comments like this in the past, and Mitrovic has ended up playing, but my gut feeling is he won't play, and my concern with him anyway was the yellow card. So, yeah, he's very close to a suspension anyway. There's too many red flags with him. Mount and Havertz thoughts? Yeah, Havertz did score a hat-trick in the friendly. I think it was against Brentford, but I always say this about Havertz. For me, he's far too inconsistent. I know Mount has been as well this season, especially from an FPL perspective, but yeah, I think Mount is the one I'd have more confidence in terms of FPL returns, and also Mason Mount is capable of these big hauls. Havertz hasn't really done it so far in the Premier League. Martial for the first 3, then switch to Wilson. Game Week 20 could be nice. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good kind of plan there, and you can also bring in someone like Mitrovic potentially by that time, or Ivan Toney if he's got no suspension, Nketiah. So yeah, I think that's a decent kind of switcheroo. Good to see you, Amir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, we are back to FPL. Bit rusty, but we are slowly but surely getting back into it. And by the way, once again, I think this happened in the last... it might have been my World Cup stream. I'm not so sure, but we've got the blinds completely exposed. So be right back. I'm going to sort this out because otherwise you're probably going to be freaked out by the contrast and light. So we'll go back to the fixture ticker and we will be back answering your questions. Okay, we are back. Apologies for that. And yeah, that's what happens sometimes with changing weather. So here we are. Yes, it's a lot darker, but hopefully no distracting lights and anything like that. So Trossard or Saka? I'd go for Trossard. Will James play? I think so. He's in a lot of predicted lineups for Chelsea, and I think that will be the case. What about Robertson? Like I said, I think if you're looking for a differential defender, he's one of the best, but my concern with Liverpool is they have a lot of away games coming up, and they haven't kept a clean sheet in away games so far this season in the Premier League, and we didn't really get any insight into an improvement defensively against Manchester City in the Carabao as well. So, yeah, he's not a bad option, of course, and we know what he's capable of historically, but I think you'd rather go for Cancelo, Reece James. I think it's worth the money to go for those instead. No, he isn't. Foden is definitely not nailed on to play. Welcome Chelsea Blues, good to see you. If Salah does not start performing the second half of the season, thoughts on downgrading Salah and upgrading Greenwood to have more balance and no bench options? Yep, that's obviously not a bad idea as well, but you also want to be a bit careful about not having too much squad depth. Now look, it's good to have the options on your bench anyway. You might need them at some point, but you also will have benching headaches, and you will occasionally leave points on your bench, and more often than not, if you have pretty much no bench players, so to speak. Another thing you could do is just do Salah to De Bruyne, or go to, yeah, it could just be a cheaper midfielder anyway, but you can use that money to upgrade your defense. Maybe if you don't have Reece James, you can use that to upgrade someone like Ben White, or just a cheap defender like Castagna, all the way up to Reece James or a Robertson. So it doesn't just have to be upgrading Greenwood. You could also use in other areas as well, but I don't mind it. You just have to be a bit careful as well of the balance, and you will have benching headaches. I'd go for Nketiah, like I said in the stream a few times. They're both good. I think Martial is the more popular pick, and I can understand it. But with Martial, he's such an injury-prone player, and that puts me off massively. Martinelli or Rashford for the next 3 game weeks? Rashford, I think, from those two. Once again, so in terms of the kits, it's nothing fancy, nothing groundbreaking. It's just a Chrome extension. Why is everyone going for Kepa and James? Because they have a double game week in 19, and also Kepa should start. He's back in training, and he was the first choice. He's only 4.5 million as well. Don't forget that. So with Kepa, I think there's a lot of arguments for him, because you can just spend 9.6 million on 2 goalkeepers in Kepa and Ward, and you're kind of settled. You've got 2 decent defenses, and you've also got 2 keepers of a high potential, a high ceiling. As for Reece James, it's because in just a one-off game, if he gets a 60-minute cameo, he can easily get a double-digit return. He's got the attacking potential, and he's got some good fixtures on top of the double game week, which isn't great, by the way, the double, but the fixtures before and after are pretty good as well. Kepa and Cancelo or Ederson and Robertson? Kepa and Cancelo for me. Thoughts on Ederson? I mean, he's not a bad choice, of course he isn't, but what I don't like about him is the ceiling. So with Kepa, Ward, and a few other goalkeepers like Pope, they could easily get 7 points and above. With Ederson, it's going to be very rarely the case. So not only that, you've also got Cancelo, who's nailed on. He's going to start pretty much every single game. He's a bonus points machine, and he's got the attacking potential, and there will be the odd occasion where Cancelo gets a double-digit return. Let's not forget that. So I would rather go about it that way. Just 1 clean sheet for Liverpool away versus Everton, but yeah, very hard. Yeah, that is true. The reason why I forgot about that, Marco, is because I had Trent in that game, and he got subbed off for, 59 minutes, 58 minutes, and he didn't get the clean sheet. But yeah, that's the only clean sheet they got. Thank you for the correction. Thoughts on Che Adams as a third striker? I'd probably say no. Now, if you want a bench strike, or should I say a budget forward, I don't think that's a bad choice, of course, but you've got Nketiah, Martial, and a few other options like that as well. So, look, he's a decent choice, and he's got some really good fixtures, actually, but I wouldn't go there, personally. I support Arsenal, but that shouldn't matter too much. I tried to take that bias aside when building my FPL team and also giving suggestions. Saliba or James? I'd go for Reece James. Who to bench? Have Almiron, Shaw, Trippier? Yeah, I'd bench Almiron as well from those 3, I think. Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Once again, best keeper for me is Kepa. If he's fit and available, which I think is the case, he's been training. But yeah, if he's fit enough, he should start, and there will be no problems there whatsoever. Darwin and Almiron at 5 million, or Foden and Nketiah? Oof. It's a close one. I'd probably say Foden and Nketiah. But yeah, some really good questions in here. Very difficult to call some of these. Kulusevski until game week 21, and then get Trossard for the double game week. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I don't have the funds to do that per se with my current squad structure, but I think that looks great. I don't like booking in transfers too much, but you know, to only have that kind of move really on the cards is completely fine. I think that looks great. Almiron, KDB, Wilson, or Kane, Foden, Almiron. Probably Kane, Foden, Almiron. I'm going for Salah, but it kind of lists pros and cons for both players. So KDB plays in a better team. He's got a double game week very soon. He's also shown some great form for City, you know, whether it was in the Carabao Cup just now or just before the Premier League ended for the World Cup. With Salah, he was showing some form as well. He's on penalties and he's nailed on to start every single game, and he's got no Carabao Cup matches in January. So I think there's arguments to be made for both of them. I think it's 50-50, to be honest. I'm just going for Salah because I've already got Haaland and I want to cover Liverpool offensively, but I also want Kane at the same time. So my way of dealing with that is to have Harry Kane, Salah, and Haaland. Saka or Mount? I think Saka's the better option overall. I don't think there's any debate about that, but with Mason Mount, he's got the double very soon. I would still personally go for Saka. Keep Saliba, 4.7 million purchase price, or upgrade to James. I'd probably upgrade to James, Lager, if you can. That's just the way I'd go about it. James or Gabriel? James. If you were to pick one from Trossard, Rashford, Martinelli, who would it be? For the next 3 game weeks, it'd be Rashford. Long term, it'd be Martinelli. Really close one, though. It just depends what you want, really. Are you tempted in doing White to James and Kane to Darwin? Like I said, that's something I could consider going forwards, but I just think Kane is worth the extra millions over Darwin, so I would maybe find another way to do that, to make that move possible. But yeah, it is something I'm considered, yeah, of course. Nunez and Bruno or Salah and Mitrovic? Probably Salah and Mitrovic, but Mitrovic is a big doubt to start in Game Week 17, and he's also got a potential suspension very soon. If Martial scores, will that mess up your rank? Not really. I don't think so anyway. I'll check his ownership right now, by the way, because, I mean, the last time I did check his ownership, it was very low. And remember, a lot of people are going for these players, but just because a lot of people are doing it on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, it doesn't mean everyone has them. Martial, for example, has 4.7% ownership, which actually is quite appealing now that I look at it. But yeah, it won't mess up my rank, I think. It will just give a huge boost to those that have him if he does score. But that is a good question. I appreciate it. Kulusevski, Saka, or Trossard? Trossard for me. Mitrovic or Martial? Martial. Just because Mitrovic has too many yellow flags and red flags really about him. Mount, Martinelli, Saka, or Saka, Martinelli, Almiron? I would go for Saka, Martinelli, and Almiron, but look, you've already got a double up in Arsenal offensively in both scenarios. That's the thing though, Mount does have the double, Almiron doesn't, and you might look to bench Almiron in certain game weeks, like when he faces Arsenal. So in that case, I'd go for Mount, Martinelli, Saka. But also think about what you will do with the extra money if you go for Almiron as well. That has to factor into your thinking. James or Gabriel, we answered that. I'd go for James. Thoughts on Rodrigo? I do like him, and he was actually in one of my first drafts after Game Week 16 ended, but my problem with Rodrigo is he faces City, and you've got so many options at a similar price with better fixtures. So I like him a lot. He was great against Spurs, and also whenever he was fit so far this season, but I would go elsewhere. Martinelli or Saka, I'd go for Martinelli. Cancelo replacement, probably Reece James or... yeah, probably just Reece James, I think. I think that's the best one. Rashford or Rodrigo, Kepa or Pope? Rashford, and I would go for Kepa. De Gea and James or Kepa and Shaw? Kepa and Shaw. Start Gabriel or Trippier? I would go for Trippier. Is Kulusevski nailed? At the moment, yes, Sing. So Spurs have Harry Kane, Son, and Kulusevski available, but you've got Richarlison, who is injured, I think, for up to a month. Yeah, I think Kulusevski will be fairly nailed, actually. Just seen Shaw's only 5% ownership. Yeah, it's a bit surprising as well, and that's why, looking at the ownerships of some of these players, I am considering going a bit different with, you know, well, when I say going a bit different, making a few changes. Even someone like Martial potentially for a few weeks. But like I always say with Martial as an example, he's very injury prone. I know Shaw has been in the past, but I'd say over the last year or two, he's gotten fewer injuries compared to what he did before. Kane, Foden, Almiron, or Kane, Trossard, Zaha? Kane, Foden, Almiron. I just can't bring myself to recommend Zaha. Havertz time. I mean, fair enough. I know he's been showing good form over the last month when you look at the friendly and also in the World Cup, but I don't know. I just can't bring myself to go for Havertz. I mean, look, it can pay off, and good luck to anyone who does go for him, but I'm just not going to pick him. It's as simple as that. Bench Mount or get Andreas and upgrade Martial to Wilson. Bench Mount, oof. I think I just keep it as it is. I wouldn't do Andreas up to, well, what is it? Get Andreas and upgrade Martial to Wilson. Yeah, I just go for the first option, but benching Mount against Bournemouth is a bit risky. Bench Andreas or Almiron or Che Adams. I would bench Andreas Pereira, I think, from those three. Why are people doubling up on Liverpool attack despite 4 fixtures? Yeah, this is the thing. Like, as much as I want a Liverpool attacker, a double up does seem excessive. I don't want to go for Darwin and Salah as an example, despite how good they are as FPL assets. So I do agree with that. Not too sure why that would be the case, but probably just because they think Salah and Nunez are some of the best options in their position, which they are. But at the same time, I'd rather go for a balance. I had Kane since Game Week 10, but time to give KDB that spot. I have a great feeling about Kulusevski, though. I have a book named The Answers Book, and I got a great answer when I asked the question about Kulusevski. Fair enough. Yeah, look, it could be the case, but I think with Kane, though, I'm not sure if you lot are aware as well, Harry Kane has an exceptional record on Boxing Day. I know it's just one game week, but I think over the last 7 years, he's never blanked when he's played on Boxing Day. Let's see if that continues now. But Harry Kane, for me, is the most consistent player, bar Erling Haaland. Is Mitrovic fit? I'm not so sure. He is a big doubt for Game Week 17. Kepa or Pope? Kepa. Choose Shaw for the clean sheets, but I think James is a better attacking threat. Yeah, I agree. James is definitely the better attacking threat. I would argue Chelsea still have a slightly better defence and they don't have as many problems at the back. But another thing with Chelsea is they were looking really poor before the break. I know they beat Brentford 5-1 like a week ago or something like that, but I don't have enough confidence to go for a double up defensively in Chelsea. Greenwood, Trossard, Salah, or Darwin, KDB, and Andreas. Probably Darwin, KDB, and Andreas as a trio. Yeah, 1 hour to go. Yeah, the first hour has whizzed by, but we still got 59 minutes left for the deadline. Start Shaw or White? I would go for Luke Shaw. White and Bueno or Botman and Patterson allows Martial to Mitrovic. I just keep Martial. I think Martial is the slightly better pick of the two. Yeah. I would probably go for Botman and Patterson, I think. It's a close one, though. Really close one. Start Shaw, Anthony. I'd go for Shaw. Thoughts on Trent being a differential? Yeah, he is a doubt, actually. Be aware of that. I think he's got an illness right now, and he's not fully up to speed, so he might not start in Game Week 17, but once he's available, he's starting games. I think he's obviously always... I think him and Robertson could be the difference makers for people looking to gain rank. You know, people like myself in a poor position, they could be the difference makers. Thank you, Yusuf. I'm doing well. What about you? Is Saliba and Gabriel going to play? Gabriel will play. As for Saliba, we just don't know. There's going to be late tests conducted, and then we'll see. Arsenal don't have to risk or rush Saliba back in. They could play Ben White alongside Gabriel and play Tomiyasu or play someone else like Cedric. So I think Saliba will be available, but he might not start. He might be on the bench. Gabriel will definitely play. Is Carvalho a good choice? I just wouldn't go for him personally. To cover Liverpool offensively, Salah and or Nunez, I think 1 is enough. I wouldn't go for 2. You have 1 from Chelsea and none for Fulham. Not targeting the doubles yet. Like I said, I'm trying not to get too caught up in the doubles. They're not that great anyway. I know Fulham have the best on paper, but at the same time, you still wouldn't expect too many returns from them. So look, yes, I might add some more as the weeks progress, but am I in a rush to get all of them? Not really. Otherwise, I'd have Andreas, I'd have Reece James and Mason Mount as well, potentially, but I'm not that fast, I think. Yeah, I've used unlimited transfers, but there could still be a few more changes. How about me? Brentford defensively just haven't filled me with confidence. I wouldn't go for Ben Mee. Foden, another 8 million midfielder, and Kane or Salah, KDB and Martial. Probably Salah, KDB and Martial. Both trios are fine. Nunez or Salah, I'd go for Salah. Havertz, not for me, but he has obviously been pretty decent in recent friendlies and in the World Cup. Is no Liverpool okay? I don't think it's a problem. I will try to go for 1, but if you go for none, it's completely fine. You could still make up a lot of points by having Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland up front. Akanji or Stones instead of Cancelo? Probably Stones, but it's a really close call. I don't think either of them are nailed on to start every single game. Start White or Trippier? I would start Trippier. White or Botman to bench? To bench, I'd bench Botman and start White. You might have Trippier anyway, so I think that would speak for itself. Might get trusted for the double and really like him, but his record versus bottom 10 teams, yeah, that is true. He tends to do much better against the top teams, so to speak. And I'm seeing a lot of people do that. They go for someone like Kulusevski first and then make their change in Game Week 21 to go for Trossard. If I say my transfers now, before the deadline, will I still be able to make unlimited transfers for this game week? Yeah, Patrick. So if you confirm your transfers right now, you can still make more changes before the deadline. Yes, you still can do that. Is Ivan Toney playing? Yes, he is right now, Aaron, but like we keep on saying, there is the possibility that at any time he's just going to be suspended, and we don't know when that's going to be. But as things stand, he will play, and we'll get the lineups very soon anyway. But after the deadline, of course, unless we get some leaks. Yeah, Nketiah's a differential. If you're looking for a budget striker, I'd probably go for him, even over Martial, but it's a close call. Yeah, I think Nketiah's fine, and I think he will start down the middle and not Martinelli, despite that possibility also existing. Martial, Wilson, probably Martial. I think the fixtures kind of swing it for me. They're both injury prone as well. So, yeah, probably Martial for the short term. Best 8 million range midfield at 5th spot. Probably between Foden, Saka and Kulusevski for me. I know Mason Mount has got a double, so you could argue him as well. I would probably go for Foden, but he is very risky. Which one is better, Bruno or Rashford? Rashford for me. Bruno is a few million more expensive, and Rashford has shown better form from a goals and assist perspective, let's say. Trossard or Martinelli? Trossard. Garnacho over Rashford to get Kane? No, I wouldn't do that. I think Rashford is worth the extra millions, and I wouldn't sacrifice that, even though you're getting Kane in as well. Yeah, Kane, I am probably going to go for him in the end. He's someone that I think could have made the difference for me if I had him much earlier. I think I'm going to go for him. Are you going to switch to De Bruyne in Game Week 20? Potentially, yes. I do prefer Salah, I think, for the next 2 game weeks, but in Game Week 20, 21, I might make that switch to De Bruyne. Yep. Trossard or Martial? Trossard for me long term. Best goalkeeper pair to have for me is Kepa and Ward. Yeah, that is true. FPL website could go down, so that is a good suggestion. Try not to leave it last minute. Try to confirm your transfers, you know, I'd say by 10:30, so in 23 minutes time if you can. The website should still be up around, 40 minutes time, but don't risk it. The closer you get to the deadline, the bigger chance there is of a site crash. Thank you, Tasby. I actually, when I went to the Argentina parade celebrating the World Cup, there was someone with a Bangladesh flag just singing Bangladesh. So big up Bangladesh. Obviously, it's great to have so much support there. Saka, Martinelli. Martinelli. Foden or De Bruyne? De Bruyne. If you can afford it, I'd go for him. Martial, nailed starter. I think for now he is. My main concern with Martial is the injuries, and I don't see him starting, getting the 90 minutes every game. I think maybe 60, 70 minutes and then being subbed off. And United could also play Rashford down the middle and then bring on Garnacho. Thank you, Lager, for the super chat. I appreciate that. Kepa, James, Cancelo, Trippier, Martinelli, Rashford, KDB, Almiron, Darwin, Haaland, Kane, Bench, Ward, Patterson, Andreas. Bueno, thoughts? I think, so like I said with a team before, I like it a lot overall. My main concern would be having both Bueno and Patterson. I would try to upgrade one of those defenders at least, even if it's to a Ben White, a Castagna, a Doherty, a Luke Shaw, Diogo Dalot. Just a defender, I think, in a better team, a better defence, and someone a bit more reliable that can come off the bench and do a job for you compared to Patterson and Bueno. But to be honest, you still got Andreas. The bench overall is decent. You've got a great starting 11. I've got no issues whatsoever with your starting 11. I think it's fantastic. And yeah, you found the way to get in Kane, Haaland, KDB, and you've also managed to get James in, which I haven't done. And in order to do that, I can understand why you've done the other moves as well. But for me personally, I would try to upgrade one of your defenders if you can. The problem is, what do you do? How do you achieve that? And it might require downgrade elsewhere, and you might not be prepared to do it. Honestly, it's a great team. Just a bit concerned about the backline in particular. I think Kepa will start, yeah. He has been training, same with Mason Mount the other day. Why short over James? Well, there's a big difference in price. It's not necessarily one over the other. In order to get Reece James, I would have to downgrade someone else and find an extra million or so. And I'm not so sure if I want to do that. Score predictions, we can do that later on when we go through the fixtures. Mount or Trossard? I would go for Trossard. Why Trossard pick? Foden. With Trossard, he's been one of the best midfielders in the game so far this season. And even though he's got a few tough games coming up, he actually does very well against the top 10 teams compared to the, let's say, the easier fixtures like Southampton that's coming up right now. And when you look at Foden, I like him a lot, but I'm also not able to afford him without making a downgrade elsewhere. And Foden isn't nailed on to start, whilst Trossard is. So there's quite a few things you could say there, but I'm quite happy with Trossard right now. He's another one that's been a bit of an FPL troll for me, but I'm hoping for better things in the second half of the season. Start Tony or Martial? Martial. Yes, this is my team. Almiron, Mount, Martial this game week. This game week, I'd say Martial. Mount or Trossard? I'd go for Trossard. It's completely up to you, though. Wilson and Darwin or Kane and White? Kane and White for me. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Alternative for Rodrigo, budget 6.6 million. $6.6 million. I'd say Almiron. Yeah, Almiron for me. Cancel and Darwin or Botman and Kane have James, Trippier, White. Yeah, it's a close call. Probably Cancelo and Darwin for me. And the rest of the defense looks great as well. Do you keep him back up for Kepa, injury risk, or Mendy becomes first choice? As a backup, I mean, I've got Ward there anyway, so it wouldn't be a priority transfer, I think. But in terms of other goalkeepers I'd look at, I would consider the likes of Robert Sanchez, especially if they get a double or triple game week. Raya. But more importantly, I could look to upgrade to a Nick Pope again, or Ramsdale, or Jose Sarr. So those are that's the pool of goalkeepers I'm looking at, really. And even a downgrade to Iverson isn't the worst case scenario, actually, but I think that's what I'd do. Bentancur or Xhaka? Bentancur is an injured out, so I would go for Xhaka, who I think is the better option anyway. Start Patterson or White? I would start White. Start Almiron or Martinelli? I'd go for Martinelli. Also having Edison instead of Cancelo. We discussed this before. I'd still rather just go for Cancelo. Bonus points machine, attacking potential, and he will start pretty much every single game. So I think Cancelo is worth the extra million or so. Kane or Nunez? Kane. Cancelo plus White or James and Walker? Cancelo and White. Robertson, Guimaraes or James, Eriksson, Odegaard? I'd go for James and Odegaard. Martial versus Wilson versus Nketiah. Close call, but I would go for Nketiah, then Martial, then Wilson, and I would go for Kane. Saka or Foden? I would go for Foden, but my main concern with him is minutes. What do you think about Kepa-Sanchez combination? Kepa would play most weeks anyway. I like it, and you're not spending too much money in that position anyway, only 9 million or something like that, so that's completely fine for me. I think that's a good goalkeeper duo. I'm happy with Ward, and I'll just have him instead of Sanchez, but obviously Sanchez has that double or triple game week, which could be a big difference maker for you. Thank you, Shakalaka, for the super chat. So, 4 premium goods, but team looks rigid and less flexible for an emerging assets in the upcoming game weeks. Thoughts on 4 premiums, Callan, KDB, Salah, Kane? Well, that's the thing, though. Yes, as much as those 4 players you mentioned are exceptional, if the rest of your team looks a bit a bit underwhelming and you have to make sacrifices in certain positions. And not only that, you've also got, a few, let's say, a lack of flexibility, like you put it. I don't think it's worth it. I'd maybe look to downgrade one of your premiums, and it's completely up to you where you go. But yeah, I think a 3 premiums is enough. I think with 4, you're limiting yourself quite a lot in other areas. Who'd you rather bench? Almiron versus Saka versus Nketiah versus Ake? Well, from those 4, who would I bench? Probably Ake. Should I start Mitrovic or Mount or Almiron? From those three, I would start Mason Mount with the fixture in mind. Foden, Haaland, KDB triple. Yeah, I think Marcus said it before. Triple up in City attack isn't a bad idea whatsoever, but I would personally just go for 2 and then go for Cancelo defensively, or just stick with 2 in general. I think a triple up is a bit too much, even as good as City are. And you can also cover different attacks and go for more nailed-on players. And Pep Roulette can easily devastate you in certain game weeks. And also remember, City have more games coming up in January with the FA Cup coming around. You've also got the Carabao Cup matches as well. So, yeah, I think a double up is already enough. Yes, I am an Arsenal fan, Tasby, yes. Kepa, James, Trippier, Gabriel, Salah, Saka, Martinelli, Rashford, Haaland, Martial, Darwin Nunez. Yeah, the starting 11 is completely fine, Aranya. I've got no issues with it whatsoever. I do prefer White over Gabriel. You also save a bit of money there, but that's completely fine. Saka or Mount or Almiron? I think Saka's the best overall, but Mount has the double, so you might want to go for him. I'd personally go for Saka. Yeah, Mason Mount was trending the other day. The same goes for Kepa, so it's good news for Chelsea assets. Buy James and Cucurella or James and Shaw? I'd go for James and Shaw, Caledon. And no worries. Thank you for that. Cancelo's not like last season. You say that, but he's still one of the highest scoring defenders in this campaign. And I think C just had a bit of a turbulent period as well, which hasn't helped. Yes, Cancelo isn't showing the same level, I think, in terms of goals and assists, but I still think he's got the potential. And I know he had a bad World Cup. He even lost his place in the Portugal team, but I think Cancelo's worth the money. Now, look, if he continues his poor form and we don't really see an upward trajectory, then fair enough. You know, it probably will be time to sell, but I'm willing to give him another chance. I have enough confidence in him to turn things around. Good morning, Koopsie Koop. Good to see you. Cheers, Tasby. It's always a pleasure, and thank you, George. KDB Mount or Salah Foden, says Lewis. Salah Foden. Both duos are good, though. I think White is better than Shaw. I think you'll get more clean sheets and more points as a result. The triple up on C also restricts premium switch and Salah to KDB. Yeah, I agree. I think there's just too many problems with having triple up in City offensively to do that. And I'm just happy with 2 anyway. 2 favourite 8 million midfielders. Without thinking about the double game mix too much, because I think that could lead us to just going for picks that haven't been great this season, I would say Saka and Phil Foden. Good Cody replacement. I think Luke Shaw, Timothy Castagna will be 2 of the best ones. Ben White, for sure. Are you going to change from Salah to KDB for double game week later? Yes, or I might even do it now. The thing is, when I look at the next 2 game weeks in particular, I just have a feeling that Salah will outscore him over the next 2 game weeks. But then again, I'm not one to really kind of book in transfers. I'm not a big fan of that. So in the end, I might just go about it differently and go for De Bruyne from the start. So I might still make some changes. Obviously, I've made that very clear. What you see is my current team right now, but it will be a very close one. I just think Salah in Game Week 17 has a great chance of falling. Obviously, De Bruyne does too, but yeah, it's a close call. A lot of these doubles, like we've established, are very, very poor. You know, you've got a lot of Man United, Cities, Tottenhams, Arsenals in there, and they aren't great fixtures. And obviously, a player of De Bruyne's quality can haul in any game, but yeah, you'd rather have some more favourable fixtures in there. De Bruyne, though, look, he's the highest scoring midfielder behind Almiron. He's a fantastic option. Also very template. But yeah, it is what it is. A lot of us are having very similar teams, so it's good that we're different in certain aspects. Welcome, Nick. Good to see you. Martial, Mitrovic, I'd go for Martial. Is Nketiah a good differential? Yeah, I think he's a good differential, and I would go for him over Martial as an example. Choose one between Martinelli and Mount. I'd just go for Martinelli. I think long-term he's the better option. Saka, Rashford, Mount, Salah and Almiron. Thoughts on the midfield? I think it's solid enough. Like I said, Mount hasn't been great so far this season, but he's got the double and he's got some great fixtures like Bournemouth at home. Thoughts on Edouard? I just wouldn't go for him. That's all I really want to say about him. Crystal Palace assets. Probably the one I'd look at most is Eze, then Zaha. I just wouldn't go for Crystal Palace assets. Alba update, should I start him? I wouldn't go for him. I think Nunez at a similar price is better for a little bit more. When I say a little bit more, we're talking about a few million more, but Kane is worth the extra millions. You're also looking at Nketiah, Martial. I think they all offer much better value. Andreas or Martial for first 11? Martial, definitely. Dilemma on 352, 343. That's the thing. So look, a lot of people, when talking about the 2 forwards or 3 forwards. They talk about Greenwood versus Andreas. We all know Andreas is a better option than Greenwood in FPL, but it's also about what you do in other areas as well with that structure. But in terms of what you said, Martial all day long. Hola, Sofia, good to see you once again. Feliz Navidad para vos también. And enjoy it. Enjoy the scenery in Sweden. I'm playing my bench boost. Fair enough. I would save it for another game week, but your bench might be looking really good, and there's no problem with it. The bench boost is a very overrated chip in general, so good luck to you. Hopefully it pays off. Start Gabriel or Almiron? I'd start Almiron. Perisic or James? James. Perisic is still a doubt to start anyway. He played in the 3rd place playoff literally just a week ago, just over a week ago. What do you think, Kane or De Bruyne? From those two, I do prefer Kane, but I think why most people are going for De Bruyne is because there's no risk of suspension, and De Bruyne also plays in a much better team, and I do understand that. Alan, Darwin and Martial. Yep, great forward line, no problems with it whatsoever. Best midfielder for the first 2 game weeks is Foden, Zaha. I'd go for Foden, despite the fixtures of Palace. Best 4.4 million defender to start, maybe Perraud could be the one for you. Agüerd is a doubt to play against Arsenal, and he had injury problems anyway for Morocco, and I think he won't start. Obviously, I can't tell you for sure, but that's just my gut feeling. Morning, Cyril as well. Hope you're having a good Christmas. Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And what about you? Great to have FPL back. Yes, it is. In a weird sort of way. Only Arsenal can ruin the end of year for me, but let's wait and see how it goes. Kulusevski differential. Yeah, I do like him. My favourite 8 million midfielders include Saka and Foden, but Kulusevski will be in the top 5 for sure. And if you're not going for Kane, I think Kulusevski is the next best thing for Spurs offensively, yeah. Morning, Harry. Agree on Mount not being great, but think I'm switching him after the double no matter what. Yeah, that's completely fine. And like I said, just because he's been poor this season, it doesn't mean he'll be poor forever. And Mount has shown in certain game weeks that he can get a double-digit return, and that's all you need. But I just haven't been convinced. And do I want to go for Mount over Rashford, Trossard, Martinelli, Saka, Foden, etc.? Not necessarily. Hi Dylan, who to bench? Shaw, Trippier, James, or Cancelo, or Almiron, Mount? From those lot, I would bench... That's a close one, by the way. I'd have to think about that. Jesus, that is a close one. I'd possibly bench Almiron, and that could easily backfire for sure. Brighton defender or Villa? I'd rather go for a Brighton defender. Spurs defense, Doherty. He's the only one I'd consider right now. Is Kane a good premium to pick for Boxing Day? For sure. Like I said, he's never blanked in Boxing Day, I think, over the last 7 years. And Kane has been the 2nd most consistent player in the game. But at the same time, just be aware of the possible suspension, only 1 more yellow needed, and also let's see how he reacts after the World Cup. Walker value at 4.8 million, yeah, I think he's decent, like I said, but I don't think he'll start every single game, and I just don't think he will get... With Walker, you're going to get the occasional 6-7 points, of course, but I think it's worth going for the extra millions for Cancelo. Che Adams or Wilson? I'd go for Wilson. Kulusevski or Saka? I'd go for Kulusevski and have Martinelli to cover Arsenal. Yep, I think White is better than Shaw, like we covered before. Almiron or Saka? I would go for Almiron. Cheap branch defenders? Not sure about that, but in terms of cheap defenders in general, Luke Shaw, Castagna, Botman, Doherty, I think those are some of the best ones. Cher, Shaw, White, or Castagna? White. In terms of who would I rather have long term, it'd be White. For this game week only, it would be Luke Shaw. Yeah, Nketiah is available. Yeah, he is. He's been starting in the friendlies as well, where Arsenal have struggled to score, by the way, and they've been very poor. Thank you, Adil. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I hope you're well too. Take out De Bruyne or Cancelo? I mean, they're both great options. I think De Bruyne is, in isolation, the better pick, but he's also around 12.3 million, so it's a difficult one. I'd maybe say take out De Bruyne, but I think most people would say Cancelo, and I don't really disagree necessarily. Is Doherty a good differential? I think so. Only 0.5% ownership, and he's been scoring a lot in the games, but my main concern with Doherty is once Perisic, Emerson Royal, and all these other wing-backs are back, like Sessegnon, when he's fully fit and available, I just don't see him starting every single game, and it'll be a case of him getting a few starts and then dropping back down to the bench. I would start Shaw there, Pierre. Almiron or Eze? I'd go for Almiron. despite Eze having the better fixtures. Welcome, Anthony. Is the starting 11 good? Yes, it is good. Do I have any concerns? No. I think every single player you have there is good. Even Mount, who I'm not a big fan of, but he's got the double, he's got great fixtures. So honestly, it's a very solid team, Anthony. Parod or Dunk? As things stand, I think Parod's the better pick, but I think once we get the doubles and triples for Brighton, the potential triple game week, I think he would be the one to go for. So I'd go for Dunk. Why not Ramsdale and James instead of Kepa and White? Well, I think Kepa and White offer better value for money. Ramsdale and James is much more expensive, and it's kind of difficult to compare them when Ramsdale's more expensive than Kepa by around 0.4 million, and James costs over 1 million more than White. Start Shaw or Gabriel? Sure, we covered this already. Which team has a stronger defense? I think it's really close. I'd say Arsenal have a better defense when you look at underlying numbers. But there's not much to separate them. I think both of them and City have the best defenses in the country right now. Edison, Shaw, Salah or Ward, Cancelo, Almiron. As a trio, I would go for Edison, Shaw, Salah. Almiron and Darwin or Saka, Martial. Saka, Martial. Thank you very much, Nuclear Atoms. I appreciate it. And thank you, Sophia, as well. I appreciate that as well. Yeah, the World Cup was absolutely crazy. Paul O'Keefe predicted Doherty to be benched. Well, that's actually crazy. I haven't checked his lineups. I'm guessing he posted it in the last hour or so. That's quite interesting. I would have thought Doherty would start. But yeah, I think in the long term, Doherty is a rotation risk anyway, and he won't start games in the future. So that's why I'm not going for him. Bueno or Patterson? I'd say Patterson. No. Cancelo's definitely not a must. What is the meaning of double for Mount? He's got a double game week. So if we go to Mason Mount here, just to show you. So if we go to Mason Mount in, I want to use the FPL website. So yeah, Mason Mount, as you can see in game week 19, he's got Man City and Fulham. In both games, they will count towards his points in game week 19. So he's got a double game week. That's literally what we're talking about. His ownership is 6.8%. I thought it would have been a bit more. But yeah, as you've seen so far this season, he has been pretty awful. But, you know, it won't last forever. And I think there will be one return for him over the next 3 or 4 game weeks. But yeah, he's got a double game week, and that's literally all it means. As you saw there, the double isn't that great. When you got Man City in a double, you could even say it's like a single game week, really. And just the 1 or 2 points you get from the City fixture will be a bonus. But yeah, that's all it is. Martinelli or Odegaard? I'd still go for Martinelli. I think Odegaard's more of a flat track bully. So when he plays kind of these relegation or recently promoted teams or teams in the relegation zone, that's where Odegaard you'd fancy a bit more in terms of points, but in general, it's Martinelli. Anthony Gordon is just a no-go for me as an option, and I wouldn't consider Everton offensively. As for Che Adams, I'd be a bit more open-minded towards him, and he's a good budget striker, but you've also got Nketiah and Martial, who I'd rather go for. Saka, Nunez, or KDB and Greenwood? Saka, Nunez is a better duo in general. How confident are we in Kepa? I think Kepa will start. He's in training. He was first choice, and I think Graham Potter is very fixated on a goalkeeper who can distribute it well, and Mendy is very awkward on the ball. Yeah, Mendy is available, but he's also been in poor form for the last year, you could say. Let's see what else we have. We've got like 33 minutes left for the deadline, by the way, so try to lock in your teams. Don't leave it to chance. The website could crash. You never know. Bench Trippier or Gabriel? I would bench Gabriel. Nketiah, Tony, or Martial? I would go for Nketiah, then Martial, then Tony. In normal circumstances, of course, Tony is my favourite of the 3, but that kind of suspension for the betting rules being breached is always looming. Kulusevski, KDB, Martial, or Kane, Rashford, Foden? Probably the first trio. But then again, it's really close, actually. It could go either way. That's a close one. I think just because Foden is a very, very big conundrum in terms of starting or not, I'd go for the first trio. I would start Reece James for sure. Should I remove Jesus? Yes, he's out for the next month or 2 at the very least. He had successful surgery. He won't be in a pitch anytime soon. Nketiah or Martial as a third striker? I'd go for Nketiah, like I said. Trossard or Rashford? I'd go for Rashford for the next 3 game weeks, and then you can always move on to Trossard. Havertz and Somerville or Kulusevski and Greenwood? I'd go for Kulusevski and Greenwood, personally. Mount or Saka? I'd probably say Mount just for the double, but and the fixtures are a bit better. Other than that, it's always Saka for me, but I'd go for Mount, and you could always cover Arsenal offensively with Martinelli. Yeah, triple Newcastle is okay, but I think a double up is fine enough. You don't have to go for a triple up. Martial and Andreas or Greenwood and Rashford? Martial and Andreas is a better duo. No, Akanji isn't nailed. Play Ben White or Che Adams? I'd play Ben White. Thoughts on Wilson? Decent budget striker, very injury prone though, and I do prefer the likes of Nketiah and potentially Martial as well. Is Ben Rama nailed? He was looking very good before the break. That is true. He was looking very good. Is he nailed on? I don't think he is, but I think he will start the next few games. And if he shows some bad form or has a bad game or two, I think he'll drop to the bench. But for now, I think he'll start. Is he nailed? No. Nunez, Martial, and Andreas, or Kane, Gross, and Greenwood? The first trio is fine. Nunez, Martial, and Andreas. How much better is Bruno compared to 8 million midfielder? I don't think he is better necessarily. I think Saka's better. I think Foden, when he does get starts, and a few others like Kulusevski if he can stay fit. So I don't think he is better. Kane and Andreas or Wilson and Mount? Kane and Andreas is my favourite, but obviously as a duo, Wilson and Mount is more balanced and it does look better, but I'd go for Kane and Andreas. Wilson, Martial, Mitrovic for the long term. For the long term, I would probably say Mitrovic, but the big concern is also the short term. Is he available in Gameweek 17 and will he stay fit and available and not get any suspensions? That's so many question marks. So honestly, for now, just Martial and hope that he stays fit. Any news on Brighton double game week? No news so far. We have no confirmation at the moment, but they could even get a triple game week potentially, depending on how things line up. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I appreciate it. Wilson and Almiron or Nketiah, Martial and Rashford? I would say Nketiah and Rashford, Josh. I think that's the way to go about it. Stuck between Shaw and Estupinian, but I don't think I'll need Shaw much over the next 3 game weeks. Yeah, in that case, I just go for Estupinian. Because if you're not even going to start Shaw or you don't really need him, and Estupinian is the better pick long term with a potential double or triple, I'd go for him. Trossard or Zaha? Trossard for me all day long. Honestly, we have no idea with Mitrovic. Marco Silva was very pessimistic in his press conference, and Mitrovic is a big doubt to play. So let's just wait and see. Martial and Andreas or Mount and Greenwood? Mount and Greenwood. Gabriel White, I'd go for White. I think he's offers a bit better value, and he's also decent for bonus points as he showed in Game Week 16. Look, Son is a great player, but he has been very poor this season in the World Cup and in the Premier League, Champions League, you name it. I think he's too much money to go for someone that's so off form. And I'd just rather go for Kulusevski or Kane. Kepa's flagged because he had an injury before the World Cup even started. He was injured for several weeks, actually, before the World Cup even began. And he's just come back from injury. He's in training, so he is available. He is in contention. Yeah, I think shortly, whether it's now, in a few days' time, I think he'll just start to be green flagged and there'll be nothing really to worry about. I think he will be in contention to start, and I think he will start over Mendy. Is Brentford going to collapse without Tony? Well, at the moment, Tony will start, but when or if Tony gets that suspension, which I think he will, I think Brentford will struggle to deal with that loss. Shaw or Maguire? I'd go for Shaw. I think Maguire is more of a doubt to start in Game Week 17 anyway, and Shaw has more attacking potential, so I'd go for him. Salah or KDB? I've said this all day long. It's 50-50, honestly. You could go for either one. I might still go for KDB. I've listed the pros and cons for both players a few times in the stream, but I think without the double, I think Salah will be my favourite, but there's a lot of other things to consider as well. And honestly, either one is fine. If you have no Liverpool coverage whatsoever offensively, then maybe you could go for Salah and go for Foden if you really want a City midfielder as well. Salah is my preference, but I might still change it about a little bit just to not book in a transfer for Kevin De Bruyne. Welcome, LFC. Good to see you. Kulusevski versus Kane. I'd rather go for Kane. Thoughts on Foden? When he starts, he's probably the best 8 million midfielder, but that's the big concern, him starting games, and it's always going to be a concern. Thank you, Jay, for the shout-out as always. Foden or Bruno, regardless of price, it's Foden for me anyway. Darwin and Mount or Kane and Andreas? I would go for Darwin and Mount. Thoughts on Alvarez? He's not going to be available right now. Maybe Game Week 18 or 19. And even when he is available, I think he'll still be on the bench from time to time. He might get the occasional start, but not enough, I think, to really go for him. I think Kepa will start. I might be wrong. Salah or Darwin Nunez, please help me. I'd go for Salah. They're both really good options, but I think Salah, with the penalties, with the consistency, I think Salah's the one. Yeah, we talked about this a lot in terms of Tony. The suspension is for the betting rules that he's breached, and we're talking about hundreds here. I think Trippier might have breached 10 or something, and he got a really lengthy ban. What Tony's done, he could be suspended for multiple months, we're talking about. So it's nothing to do with yellow cards or anything like that. It's literally to do with off-the-field activities and betting rules being breached. Will Kyle Walker start? I think so. But is he going to be nailed on every single week? No, I don't think so. Really like Saka, but don't know if Arsenal triple up is the way to go. I don't think it's the way to go. I think a double up is fine. And also, the absence of Gabriel Jesus is going to be massive for me. And Arsenal might have to be a different team in the second half of the season to cope with it. And I think they will suffer as a result. Gabriel Magalhaes or Ben White? Ben White for me. Darwin or Trossard? I would go for Trossard. Martial and Trossard or Martial and Rashford? I would go for Martial and Trossard. Yeah, Martial's fine. Getting a lot of questions about Martial. We talked about him before. 5 million defender. I would say Luke Shaw, Castagna, or Ben White. They'll be my top 3. Thoughts on free premiums? That's what I'm doing right now. I do like it, but at the same time, you know, there's a few things I'm missing. An 8 million midfielder slot, for example. I'm also missing Reece James. So you can't cover every single thing, unfortunately, but I'm quite happy with what I've got right now. Cucurella or Chalobah? Probably Chalobah. I mean, there's not much to separate them anyway. Salah or Haaland captain? I'm going for Haaland. What is the double for Mount meaning? We went through it, Twan. He's got a double game week. That's literally all it is. He's got 2 games in game week 19. Both games will count towards his points in game week 19, so he's got double the chance of scoring points. Foden and Kane or KDB and Martial? Foden and Kane. Yeah, it's a close one, though. Yeah, that's the thing, though, with Jesus. I think he's massive. I know he went, 3 months without scoring, but he offers so much. He's one of the best dribblers in the league. I think he's got the most dribbles completed, actually. The way he links up play, opens up spaces for others, the pressing, the energy he gives to the Arsenal team. I think it'll be a big miss. I don't think Nketiah can really fit in there. Most nailed City defenders. Well, Cancelo's the most nailed. We all know this, and that's why I'm going for him, amongst other reasons. Other defenders would include, I think, Laporte and possibly, I would say, Stones. But even then, I don't think he's that nailed. Martial Wilson, I'd go for Martial. Kepa or Edison, I would go for Kepa. Haaland and Kane or Salah and Haaland? I'd go for Salah and Haaland just because of the doubts about Kane. You know, 1 yellow card away for suspension, and I think Salah's the slightly better pick anyway. Havertz, Martial, Mitrovic or Wilson for the next 6 game weeks? The next 6, oh Jesus. My favourite from those would be Martial. Thoughts on Solanke? If you want a budget striker, we're talking about 6.5 million and below, he is probably the one to go for. But with just a little bit more money, you can stretch to an Nketiah, a Martial, and I would rather go there. Even Che Adams, potentially. No leaks on the Spurs lineup, as far as I'm aware. If anyone does see it, then let me know. Just check the source, because sometimes there are people that just say anything for clout. Shaw or Dalot? Shaw, because Dalot is a big doubt to start in game week 17 and might be eased back into things in game week 18 or 19. Look, in normal circumstances, I prefer Dalot, but I don't think he will start in game week 17, so that's why I'm going for Shaw. Cancelo or Kane in the team? Well, Kane for me, if I had to pick one. Is 4-3-3 still better meta? I think the meta right now is 3-4-3 or 4-3-3. It doesn't really matter anyway, but I think most people are going for 3 forwards. They're going for Haaland, Nunez, and one of, Martial, Wilson, or something like that. Even Mitrovic. And in terms of midfielders, you probably have a KDB in there instead of Salah. Probably Martinelli, Rashford, and Almiron. I think that's a really popular midfield. I'm even seeing some people going for Foden or Kulusevski and Saka. And in terms of defenders, everyone has Cancelo, Trippier, and James, it seems. So yeah, a lot of teams have that kind of template. Kulusevski nailed. For the time being, yes. And, Richardson's going to be out for the next month or so. But for now, yeah, Kulusevski will be nailed. Shaw or Castagna? I would say Shaw, but Castagna has been much better so far this season. Is Maddison fit to start? He is a doubt. I think he will start and he'll be available, but he's not completely nailed on to. KDB and Trossard or Salah and Foden? Salah and Foden looks slightly better to me, but they're both really good. Play 2 out of Kulusevski, Saka, Trossard, Martinelli. I would play... That's the thing, that's a really difficult one. Probably Saka and Trossard, but I do prefer Martinelli over Saka overall because he's cheaper. And I think long term, if he has the occasion or the possibility to play down the middle, I think that could be huge. But I think for this game week, I'd say Saka and Trossard. But honestly, you might bet some points there in the end. Alba or Nunez? Nunez for me. KDB and Saka or Salah and Foden? I think we just answered that. I'd go for Salah and Foden. Best super differential captain, Dylan, I'm way behind. I'd say Harry Kane or Mohamed Salah. It's not going to be the huge differential captain, but most people are going to go for Haaland, and that will be your way to get ahead. Thank you, FPL Diamond. Good to see you once again. Doherty for 2 assists today. Well, according to Paul O'Keefe, apparently, well, in his predicted lineup, he's not in it. Let's wait and see. That would be a bit surprising for me. Start 2 between Trippier, Shaw, and Gabriel. I would start Trippier and Shaw. Trippier, Shaw, would... I'm not sure who the third player is, by the way, because he said Trippier twice, but who would I bench? Maybe the third player, whoever that is. Walker nailed? No. I don't think he's nailed. Will Akanji start? Not so sure, to be honest. I don't think so, and I could be wrong there. Bench Shaw or Almiron? I would bench Almiron. I think Almiron has the highest ceiling, but Shaw is more likely to get a return. Who to start, either Shaw or Gabriel? I'd start Shaw. KDB or Foden? I think KDB. If you can afford it, he is worth the extra millions. He's also more nailed on. Rodrigo, Gross or Ericsson? Who to buy as a starter? Rodrigo for me. Thorson Edouard, like I said before, I wouldn't go for him. I just don't think Crystal Palace assets are worth it. If you wanted to go for one, it'd be Eze or Zaha. That's about it. Gabriel or James? I would go for Reece James, yeah. Seems like Akanji as Laporte of last season is going to start most games, yeah. It does look like it. When you look at most games, you're like, oh, he'd probably be benched, and in the end, it's him that starts. But I think with City, apart from Cancelo, a lot of the defence is very up in the air. Even Ruben Dias has been benched quite a lot, actually, over the last campaign. Suggest a replacement for Gabriel Jesus. Nketiah, Martial, Nunez. I think those would be the best ones. Just depends on your budget. Thank you very much, FPL Diamond. I appreciate it. Who should be first on my bench, Andreas or White? I would rather have White first. Yeah, look, so it's not confirmed FPL Diamond, but Paul O'Keefe, who tends to get the lineups quite spot on. Yeah, he has him on the bench. Yeah, we went through your question already in terms of the Gabriel Jesus replacements. Aaron says Cancelo or Darwin. Thank you for the super chat, mate. I appreciate it. I would go for... In terms of who to start, I'd go for Darwin. Who would I rather have in my team long term? It'd be Cancelo. Trossard or Rashford? Rashford. Who would you get for 8 million midfielder if you have Kane and Foden? It'd be either Saka, Mount, or Kulusevski. And because of the double, probably Mason Mount. Mount in for Zaha? Yes, I would do that. Trippier, Shaw? Yeah, John, once again, you put Trippier twice. So I don't know who to say because you put Trippier twice in your question. Yeah. White or Gabriel? I can't afford it. White still. Nketiah or Martial? Nketiah for me. Let me refresh the page, see if... Yeah, Kepa's still yellow flagged. Like I said, he's been injured for several months now. So this is just the injury he had beforehand. He is in training, so he is in contention to start. Don't worry about that too much. Why Salah not KDB? We went through this quite a few times. I'm not going to try to tread the same ground again. Like I said, it's 50-50. You can go for either one. I think the reason why most of us are going for KDB is because he's got the double very soon. It's as simple as that, really. I'm just going for Salah because he's got slightly low ownership. He's on penalties. He's more nailed on. He's got no Carabao Cup games in January. And there's a few other things I like about him on top of KDB, who's a bit more of a rotation risk, I'd say. Is it risky to play Rashford, Martial, and Shaw together this week? I think that's fine. The fixture's there for them to really exploit it. I think a double up is fine enough for me for United, but a triple up is also good. Is Saka a good option if you have Martinelli? He is still a good option, but I'd be very concerned about a double up in Arsenal attack, especially with no Jesus. Martial to Greenwood and Andreas to Trossard. Yeah, I think that's fine. When you look at it in isolation, Martial looks better for Game Week 17, but in the long term, especially with the potential double for Brighton, I think Trossard is the better pick. when you're looking longer term. Odegaard or Saka? Still Saka for me. Darwin and Foden or Kane and Almiron? Been stuck on this for ages now. I can see why. I would go for Kane and Almiron though. That would be my preference. Is triple up on Chelsea worth it? It is worth it. It's worth the risk with the fixtures and the double, but I'd go for 2. Worth to play bench boost? Honestly, the bench boost is very overrated. So if you've got a really good bench, you think you can get a lot of points from it, you don't even know who to bench if you don't play the boost, the bench boost anyway, then yeah, just play it. But I'm looking to save it for a double game week and see what happens, or just whenever my bench looks better than this, which I think there'll be better opportunities for me. But honestly, if you think you're going to get points from your bench, you can activate it. A 15-20 point bench would be a pretty good bench boost. Darwin or Wilson? Darwin. Mount or Martinelli this game week? Probably Mount. Reason behind Trossard